That's lovely and peaceful, isn't it? I mean, except for the distraction of the mysterious floating islands over there. This part over here is peaceful. This reminds me how long it's been since James Cameron promised the Avatar sequels, basically. Hi! I'm Blunty. Let me just flip up my visor here. One of my favourite things about this headset is the ability to flip it up out of the way and just look at the real world through your real own eyes and stuff. It makes getting a drink or fiddling with settings, if you're streaming or recording this VR stuff, so much easier. So, this is my review of the Windows Mixed Reality Experience, specifically tied to this particular piece of hardware, the Dell version of the Windows Mixed Reality headset. So, there are several companies that make these already, and probably more to come as well. They're all pretty much the same as far as stats go. Samsung's Odyssey Windows Mixed Reality headset has a slightly higher resolution, 1400 by 1600 per eye, whereas all the other headsets, including the one that I'm using here, is 1400 by 1400 per eye, which is, by the way, significantly higher than the Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive. Well, except for the new HTC Vive that's coming, the HTC Vive Pro, which has a slightly higher resolution, which is the same as the Samsung version. What that basically means is the screen is quite good. It is LCD, not OLED, so the blacks aren't quite as black as they are in something like the Vive, for example, but I have zero complaints to make about the image quality. It's very clear, very clean, the colours look great, everything like that, and the resolution certainly helps with the screen door effect. Being able to see the gaps in between the pixels is basically what that means. SDE, screen door effect, when you're talking about VR, it's being so close to the screen that you can see the little gaps in between the pixels, which looks a little bit distracting. With this resolution, 1400 by 1400 for each eye, you still get some of that if you look for it. But by and large, once you're in VR, it's very, very, very easy to forget that it exists. I have no complaints about the image quality. The controllers that we've got here, I like these. They're more comfortable and smaller and lighter than the Vive controllers, but they track using the little... am I still facing the right way? There's my desktop over there. We're in the Windows Mixed Reality Cliff House, little virtual environment where you can select things from the store, or put little statues in your garden to represent the games and apps you've got and things like that. It's a nice way to do a VR menu system. So there's my desktop over there. You can see OBS recording me. Let's go over here and have a look. Hi! Is that... Oh, that's probably really distracting to you guys. Does that look bad? That feels like it looks bad. Let's look over this way. So the controllers I quite like. The build quality doesn't feel quite as good as the Vive ones. The ergonomics isn't quite as good as the Oculus ones, but it's sort of somewhere in the middle. I really do quite like them. They're very comfortable, very light. They use standard AA batteries, which is a plus and a minus. On the one hand, you have to constantly replace the batteries. And they last... I haven't actually been timing the batteries, but I've gone through a pack of 20 over the last couple of weeks or so. And I've been doing VR a lot, by the way. I would guess anywhere between 6 and 8 hours of battery time. Benefit is you can use rechargeables in here. I do need to go out and get a set of rechargeable batteries. There's 2 in each, so 8 rechargeable AA batteries, and you can constantly cycle through them. I like this better than the way the Vive does it, though, because for the Vive, the built-in batteries, you can't replace them. Once the controllers go flat, your VR session is over, you're boned. At least this way, I can keep playing just by swapping out the batteries for fresh ones, but you do really want to get some rechargeable AA, so you're not ruining the environment while you're playing VR. You've got the thumbsticks there, which I can't really show you without moving around my environment. You've got the little grips down there as well. I like these grips better than the Vive ones. They stand a little bit proud of the controller, so they're more tactile. You can feel them a bit easier. The little touchpad here. This is not quite as good as the Vive ones. The sensitivity's not quite as nice. I think they're a little bit smaller as well, but they serve their purpose perfectly well. So they're touch sensitive. You can move around them, or you can click on them as well, like a D-pad style thing. And of course, you've got a little Windows button and a little action button there as well. And that's pretty much it for the controllers. They track optically using the 2 little cameras on the helmet here, which means in certain games, if your controllers are outside of that field of view, and these are very wide-angle lenses, think sort of GoPro-style wide-angle, if they spend too long out of your line of sight, they kind of lose tracking, and that's been a bit of an issue in some games. VR chat, for example, when you're sort of sitting around your avatar, your hands are at your side, sometimes your arms will freak out on you. That doesn't happen with something like the Vive, which tracks the controllers externally using those little satellites. On the other hand, the headset and the controllers is all you need. You plug this into your Windows machine. Windows goes, hey, there's a Windows VR, Windows Mixed Reality thing, and you're ready to go. There's nothing else to hang up around your room, no extra cameras to plug in. It makes it super, super easy just to get this thing up and running immediately. That's one of the biggest selling points as far as I'm concerned with the Windows Mixed Reality headset. Super easy to use, super comfortable. The controls are great. They track wonderfully well in almost all situations. The Vive is better, but this is certainly going to be good enough for almost everybody out there as far as I'm concerned. And all right, see the controller is behind me now. I'm looking away. I look back. It's where I expect it to be. Look forward. This controller's behind me. I can wiggle it around, look back. It's where I expect it to be. It keeps hold of the object. So let me throw something here and... I think I hit myself on the way back. Yeah. There we are. Kind of worked. Kind of what I was trying to demonstrate there. Let's throw it down the mountain. Zerp. Okay, so here we go. Get it behind me here. And we will keep it behind me as I whip it forward. There we go. So that's demonstration that it does track when it's behind me. It does track the acceleration of the thing, but absolute positioning only happens when it's in front of the lenses, sort of somewhere in kind of, oh, there we go, just at the top there, at least tracking. Because of the angle of these cameras, they are angled a bit down, because most things you do in VR is down in front of you here. So in some circumstances, even when they're in your field of view, as far as VR is concerned, they're out of field of view of the camera. You can see right there, they've lost tracking just the very, very top of my field of vision. If I look up, they get tracking again. So, like I said, not exactly as good as HTC Vive do it, but a much more convenient way to do it, and it works relatively flawlessly for the vast majority of VR experiences. So, just something to keep in mind. The gameplay experience is fantastic. You've got a small selection of games in the Windows Marketplace, which I can show you over here. But yeah, there's a selection of sort of various things here, including some popular stuff like Arizona Sunshine, very, very popular sort of zombie first-person shooter type thing there. There's Asteroids VR, which is a sort of VR movie kind of experience, sort of short film kind of thing. You've got passive experiences and games and learning experience and Superhot. If you've got any kind of VR, I think that's available on all the VR stores now. But Superhot is so good in VR, so much fun. But yeah, there's a relatively small selection of stuff on the Microsoft Store as far as Windows Mixed Reality apps go. But guess what? It works with Steam VR just fine. You can see there I've got my little shortcut set on my desktop so I can sort of activate it easily from within my Windows experience here. So I'm going to have to stop the recording, swap around my the way I capture, then show you the Steam VR stuff. Okay, so here we are in Steam VR Home, the virtual environment. As you can see, the Windows Mixed Reality controllers represent properly with their own little digital avatars, so you get no sort of controller dysphoria. The controllers in your hands are represented properly in the game, which makes it easy. So let's go over in here. Oh, hello. Well, normally, I don't know what's going on here. Some sort of, I wonder if Steam is having issues, but normally they've got icons up here for your recent apps, but they're all the icons are grayed out at the moment. But yeah, this is where you select all your Steam VR stuff. And Steam not found? What? Okay, I might have to reinstall Steam or something. I don't know. This is going so smoothly. Point is, as the B-roll I was showing you over my ramblings here will demonstrate, it works perfectly fine with Steam VR games. So let's talk about the Dell headset specifically. I really like it. I like it a lot, actually. It's a very, very comfortable headset. As you can see, it's got the PlayStation VR style band around the head there. That sort of carries all of the weight of the headset. When it flips up like this, almost none of the headset visor itself is being pressed into your face, but it still fits on your face very, very well. There is a very slight light gap around my nose there, which is nice because I can sort of do that and look through it and make sure the OBS is recording things like that without flipping up the visor, which is handy sometimes. But I have no issues with light leak around the side. The padding is very, very soft, very, very comfortable, and non-absorbent as well, so it doesn't get sogged up with sweat, which is really nice as well, particularly in the Australian summer, which I'm dealing with here at the moment. Same thing with the padding on the forehead. Very, very dense, thick, very, very comfortable padding. And even when you cinch this thing up tight, it does cinch up at the back with a little knob. You just sort of twist it up and it tightens up around your head. Even when you do that quite tight, zero issues. I've had zero issues with the visor flipping up accidentally when I'm in game. That's a very, I mean, it does sort of wobble about if I do that to it, but when you're actually in a game, when it's fitted properly, you can whip your head around, no problem. You can look up, down, and around and stuff, and it stays on your face where it should be. It doesn't slide off to the side. It doesn't flip up on you, which is one of the things I was worried about when I first saw these headsets announced, and I saw, well, they've got the flip-up thing. Isn't that going to be a problem when you're whipping your head around? Hasn't been an issue. But the lenses. You don't get that concentric ring thing going on that you get with the Oculus Rift or the HTC Vive to some sort of lesser extent. You don't get a lot of God ray kind of action either. The lens is actually quite impressive. I will say that there is no manual IPD adjustment, no manual interpupillary distance adjustment, so the space between your eyes, basically. My eyes are a little bit wider set than this allows for, so I've got this maxed out at 68. My eyes need like 70, 71, I think, interpupillary distance. So I go slightly cross-eyed inside here. It is something you really want to test for yourself before you buy one of these headsets to make sure that if your eyes are particularly widely set, it's not going to be an issue for you. So when it comes to the lenses, the sweet spot is relatively small. So if your eyes are looking straight forward, very, very clear. If you move your eyes around, but not your head, and you look to the edges of the lenses, the circular lenses, it does get quite blurry. This is true of all headsets, by the way. It's just a physical fact of the way these lenses work in these things, and there are some lens technologies coming along later that attempt to address this, but for now, all you need to know is the sweet spot is relatively small, but not annoyingly so. You do adjust to it quite quickly. When you're in VR, you learn to move your head around when you want to look over there instead of sort of darting your eyes left to right like you would in real life. You kind of subconsciously train yourself to do that so you see the clearest. But it is worth noting that those two things, the interpupillary distance is software controlled and not manually controlled, which might be an issue for a very small percentage of people out there with particularly wide set eyes, or particularly narrow set eyes for that matter, I suppose. But I think the official number that was put out there is 98% of people won't have a problem. Glasses wearers, your mileage is going to vary. My glasses broke, and they've been broken for some time, so I couldn't test them myself. But judging by the design of this headset, it depends on the glasses you're wearing. You might get away with it, you might not. I would suggest that if you are concerned about that, you need to wear glasses inside your VR headset. You know, you can't get away without wearing glasses, or you don't have contact lenses, or you don't want contact lenses, all that kind of stuff. Go into a physical store and ask to try it on to make sure it will work over the glasses you want to be using. And if at all possible, ask to see a working unit so you can see if the glasses inside the headset is going to affect the way you view the world and everything like that. But I can't give you any advice on that directly, because different glasses sit differently on your face depending on your frame, how thick your glasses are, and how big your lenses are, all that kind of stuff. There is no easy answer to that, except to say that I believe the way this visor is built, I expect some glasses wearers won't have a problem with it. Something this headset does not have is an inbuilt headphone option, though. But as you can see, I'm using some Plantronic Rig 500s right now, which have a nice wide headband. They clip over the thick head strap of the visor quite easily. I'm also using a mod mic, because while the microphone that comes with these Rig 500s is pretty good, it's not good enough for what I want to do with it. So the mod mic I've got clipped over the side there as well, just in case you're curious about that. I like the cable routing on this headset as well. There's a little sliding clippy thing, which I can't feel right now because my headphones are over it, but I'll show you in the B-roll. This little sliding clippy thing, so you can have it situated so the cable runs behind you, which is good for standing experience, or you can have it situated so the cable comes down the side here, which is good for seated experience. So you're not sort of sitting against the cable and sort of pinching the cable off. So when you tilt your head down, the cable doesn't get pinched off. You can have it running out in front of you like that. On the subject of the cable, it is a little bit shorter than you get with the HTC Vive. It's about 3 meters instead of the 4 or so with the HTC Vive. So if you're setting up room scale stuff or a standing experience, be aware of that. You might have to reposition your computer to somewhere a little bit more convenient. I'm actually running a separate computer in my little VR space here, as opposed to my desktop computer, because there's no way the cable would run to my desktop. My regular desktop, there's just no way it would run from there to here, and I wouldn't be able to use room scale stuff. So that's something to be aware of. But yeah, you can certainly do seating experiences, standing experiences, room scale experiences. They all work just like they do with the Vive and things like that. You can move around, you can walk around over here. I've got to be careful I don't trip over anything, because I've got my boundaries turned off at the moment, because otherwise they would record through OBS and it would look sort of weird for you guys. But you can have the boundaries on or off, all that kind of stuff. So, final verdict on this. It is very, very good, especially for the price. I mean, Australians get overcharged a lot for these headsets. There's a big price difference between this headset and the HTC Vive in American dollars, not so much in Australian dollars. So, yeah, I need to get on that, guys. Microsoft, I don't know what the deal is there, but there might be some sort of price collusion going on. I don't know, but less than $300 for the kit, including the hand controllers, in American money, $299, $298, and the prices are fluctuating a little bit, versus the $600-700 for the Vive, things like that. It is a lot better, I think, as far as getting into VR. This is going to be absolutely good enough and more than good enough for a lot of people out there. It's a little bit 6 of one, half dozen the other, depending on what your preference is between this and the HTC Vive. And those are the big choices I would make. I don't particularly like the Oculus, personally, because it's owned by Facebook and I don't trust that company. They're a sleazy, awful, gross company. I don't want anything to do with them. But also, for a more practical side of things, the Oculus, the way it uses multiple cameras to do proper full-scale tracking, 2 or 3 cameras is required. Each of those cameras needs its own dedicated USB 3 slot, and sometimes on the computer that uses internal hubs, they don't work together properly, so you have to try different USB slots. It's just a stupid way to do room-scale tracking, and it's cobbled together because they didn't expect to have to do it when they were first designing this stupid thing. The Rift is fine, but I would much rather HTC Vive or this. Those are the two big choices in VR as far as I'm concerned at the moment. The trade-off between them goes like this. These are simpler, easier, more comfortable. The cable situation, one cable with 2 plugs that go straight into your computer versus the HTC Vive, which is sort of one big wide thick cable that goes into a breakout box that then goes into your computer, and you've got the satellites, each of which needs their own power supply, and sometimes you need to run a sync cable between them if you're not doing optical sync, depending on what your situation is at home. It's such a complicated thing. I mean, once you get it set up, it's fine. And it doesn't take so long to set up if you know what you're doing. But the thing with these is you don't need to know what you're doing. You don't need to be an expert guru computer hacker nerd guy. You don't need to understand how everything works. You just plug this in and it works. Out of the box. Nothing else to set up. Literally, pull it out of the box, plug it in, you're good to go in a couple of minutes. No other setup apart from clearing some space so you can stand up. That's the other thing I hear people say, oh, I'd like to do VR, but I don't have the room. You can have a seated experience in VR, no problems. You can have if you've got room to stand on the spot, you can have a VR experience. You don't have to do the room scale stuff, because as you can see here, a lot of games and experiences have little teleporter ideas, and some you can move about using little thumb pads, like in VR chat. I do that mostly standing, so I don't run into my walls. And you can just sort of move around using the D-pad style thing, which can make some people a little bit motion sick, but there are other options as well in VR chat, like the teleporting thing here. So if you don't think you have the room for VR, you're wrong. If you don't want to do the big setup thing that HTC Vive has for VR, you don't have to. I love the fact that they're so plug and play. I love the fact that you get a choice of manufacturer. So you can have the Dell or the Asus and Acer, I think, are also coming out. One Samsung do one, which, as I said at the beginning, has a slightly better resolution. Haven't tried that personally because they don't sell them in Australia, which is annoying. Not that I'm a huge fan of Samsung anyway, but from my personal experience, I tried 4 different units at PAX Australia recently, a couple of months back. From my personal experience from PAX, in sort of the 10 minutes I spent in each one of the headsets, the Dell was the one I chose because of the comfort. I also kind of like how it looks. It looks good on camera because it's all that white. It looks like a sort of Baymax droid or something like that, you know. But I also quite like the Lenovo one as well, which is what I said in my original PAX video. The Lenovo one was also very, very comfortable. I think the Lenovo one might even be a bit lighter than this. But yeah, if you're on the fence about whether to get this or the HTC Vive, I've gone through the sort of decision-making process. HTC Vive is better, except for the resolution, with the exception of the new version of the HTC Vive, which will be coming out, the HTC Vive Pro. We don't have a price on that as I speak, so who knows? Probably going to be much more expensive anyway. But performance versus dollar versus utility versus enjoyment, these are absolute winners as far as I'm concerned. If you're on the fence about VR, dive into the Windows Mixed Reality thing. The only real compromise you're going to make is the behind-the-back hand tracking, which is almost irrelevant because, as I've demonstrated in other videos and other footage, and probably some video footage I'm overlaying on this as well, you can reach behind you, grab stuff like your arrows on fire in those other bow and arrow game and things like that. They do track behind you. It's only when they spend more than a couple, more than sort of 10, 15 seconds outside of your line of sight that the Windows Mixer Editor goes, oh, I'm not sure where that controller is. Here's my best guess. It sort of freezes in place and just does the angle tracking. But in almost every VR experience I have tried, they work flawlessly. So I think that was everything I wanted to cover in my little sort of video here, review. Really, I've talked about the controls, I talked about the headset, the screen, the comfort, the audio situation, the room tracking, the seating, the compatibility. Yeah. So, like I just said, end of the story is I strongly recommend these for anyone curious about VR because the price of entry is very, very low. The setup is very, very easy. A virtual leaf just dropped in front of my face, or perhaps some bird poo. I'm not sure. There are birds around here. That would be fun, wouldn't it? If Valve put pooing birds in their virtual simulation here. These little sparrows. I've been sidetracked again. So thanks for watching. I am Blunty. And we'll catch you next time. And hopefully I'm still facing the camera. I am. Fantastic. I've had solo experiences. I've streamed some VR, which is fun. I put VR content up on YouTube. So if you're a content creator, this is a great way to go too, because the whole situation with recording in OBS, and even if you want to do a bit of green screening here, actually that's something I will mention. My green screen behind me here is a big sheet, basically. It's not a proper green screen, it's just a big sheet of green material that I've stretched up over my walls. Because of the optical tracking that these use, if I face that way for too long, there's not enough detail there. It sees mostly a blank, green, perfect screen. And so it loses some tracking. So if you are a content creator and you do want to do this green screen stuff, be aware of that you might have to deliberately wrinkle your cloth under some circumstances so the optical tracking has somewhere to lock onto so it knows which direction it's facing and which direction it's moving relative to that sort of reference point. Because that's what these cameras use. They use reference points. They don't sort of map out your room in some sort of weird digital way. They go, well, that's my reference point, that's my reference point. I know from here to here, it's this amount of rotation, all that kind of stuff. You don't need to really understand how it works. You just know that you do need to have something for the camera to look at. So if you've just got a blank green canvas behind you, it may occasionally wig out as far as the head tracking goes. And I've had that happen to me a couple of times. It's not a big deal for most people, but if you're a content creator wanting to do what I'm doing here, green screen yourself against your VR gameplay, you might have to fiddle and put some deliberate wrinkles in or get some slightly different colored green tape and put some X's in like they do in Hollywood when they do reference points on their green screens. I just thought it'd be worth mentioning, just in case you're curious about how I'm doing this sort of presentation here, which I quite like. It seems to work quite well. So there you are. I'm Blunty. Thanks for watching. I will catch you next time. And perhaps I'll run into more of you in VR chat, which is a bizarre experience, but I've kind of grown a little bit addicted to it. It's very strange. And I have met a few of you fans and viewers and subscribers in there and come in, hey, I know that voice. Are you Blunt? Yeah, okay. See you there. See you in the virtual world. What should my sign-off for VR videos be? I mean, catch you next time still works, but virtually catch you next... No, that's stupid. I have to work on that. See you in the cyberspace. It's very 90s, isn't it? See you in cyberspace. When's the last time you heard someone use the word cyberspace? Awesome. Anyway. Did that exit work? Did I duck low enough to get out of the way of the screen? I hope so.